Welcome to the Dr. Dance Mom podcast, your guide to strong dancers with a bright future. I'm your host, Dr. Christensen, doctor of physical therapy, dance medicine specialist, and proud dance mom. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Dr. Dance Mom podcast, your guide to stronger dancers and a bright future. I'm your host, Dr. Christensen. In this first episode, I'd like to take some time to introduce myself and let you know who I am, what my background is, and talk a little bit about my inspiration for this podcast. I am both a doctor of physical therapy and a dance mom, and I've been practicing for 22 years in outpatient orthopedics. I wouldn't consider myself a dancer per se, but my decision to pursue dance medicine was not completely out of the blue. I have loved dance and the arts my entire life. I actually took dance classes as a young child. I specifically remember taking ballet, tap, and jazz. And I also remember being in a production of some sort of the Nutcracker when I was very small at an elementary school, I think. And I definitely have photos for evidence. I also have a core memory of warming up in dance class when I was super young, probably preschool age, to this very specific Rainbow Bright record, of which I have a copy because I do happen to collect vinyl, and I had to have it in my collection. So this is my Rainbow Bright record from the 80s, and yes, it plays. I also remember when I was young begging my mom to ride horses pretty much daily. My mom actually rode horses when she was growing up. She owned her own horse as well. And it wasn't really my mom's history with horses that led me in that direction. I actually had a good friend in elementary school who rode horses, and we would go to her horse shows all the time. And I just remember really, really wanting to ride. Of course, my parents couldn't afford to do both, so I had to choose. And when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I chose horses. So that was pretty much the end of my dance career. I've taken classes for fun as an adult, but never was a serious dancer like my daughter. In terms of music, my grandmother immigrated from Germany during World War I, and I have heard stories along the way that she had performed in lounges in New York City in maybe like the 40s. She certainly loved music, and when I was young, she used to share Shirley Temple videos with me. I remember watching them over and over and even learning some of the dances in them. I've always loved dance, Broadway, and especially live music. And just like any other kid, I definitely remember making up dances to songs in my backyard with my friends. I'm also a huge Swiftie, so expect some Taylor Swift references throughout this podcast. For the majority of my physical therapy career, I would say I was a generalist. I saw everyone kind of across the lifespan for a variety of diagnoses in a very fast-paced environment. I took a step back from full-time clinical work after my first daughter was born and took on a corporate role when I got pregnant with my second daughter, just so that I could be home a little bit more while my kids were young. As my girls got older, I felt very strongly that I wanted to go back to clinical practice, but I knew I didn't want to go back to general outpatient orthopedics. I really wanted to specialize and serve a population that traditionally didn't have access to good care, but was still within my wheelhouse. I'd been thinking about this for quite a while when I had an encounter with a dancer and her mom at the studio where my daughters were dancing. That interaction just made something click for me, and it was then that I decided I wanted to specialize in dance medicine. That interaction occurred in mid-2019, and I immediately dove into any dance medicine continuing education I could find, which wasn't really much at the time. There were some online modules with the Harkness Center for Dance Injuries, which I, kind of took all of them, and all of the other content that I could find was pretty far away. As unfortunate as the COVID pandemic was for so many, it actually worked in my favor because when the world shut down, all of the educators moved their content onto virtual platforms and started doing live webinars. I certainly had the time to take the classes, and now I also had the access. Since then, I've completely immersed myself in the dance medicine world over the past 6 years, and I found so much joy in this new chapter of my career. I've invested probably tens of thousands of dollars at this point in continuing education, and I've spent well over 300, not 1300, 300 hours in classes focused on treating dancers. In 2021, I jumped back into a local clinic part-time just to see dancers. I was very fortunate to have an opportunity where I could just work part-time on an hourly basis and just kind of use the clinic when there were, dancers that needed to be seen. In summer of 2023, I started my own business. At first, my idea was just to have an entity with insurance that I could use to serve local dance studios with workshops and screenings. As it got set up, I thought, why not just set it up so I could see patients through my practice or through my business if somebody wanted me to come to them. Last summer, I abandoned my part-time clinical work and decided to pursue my practice as my sole vehicle for patient care. Having my own practice gives me so much more autonomy to be creative in the programs I offer and how I serve my populations. In case you're wondering, I do also treat other people, mainly youth athletes and active adults. I'm also trained in pelvic health, but artistic athletes, as I call them, dancers, cheerleaders, and gymnasts are the majority of my patient population at the moment. As I mentioned, I'm also a dance mom. I am happily married with 2 daughters, aged 13 and 11. We also have 3 German Shepherds. My oldest daughter is a former dancer, but has moved on to sports. She currently loves basketball, and she also loves horseback riding. My younger daughter is the dancer in the family. She started to dance when she was about 2. My oldest actually started dance at 18 months in a mommy and me class, and when my youngest was old enough, she started independent classes right away. We have been at the same studio the entire time, so we've been there for about 12 years. My dancer is in her 3rd year of the dance company, but has been competing for 5 years. She does most styles, except she really doesn't like hip hop or lyrical, so she doesn't do those. Her favorite styles are tap, ballet, and modern, and she has her first solo this year, which we're so excited about. It's a tap solo, so there will definitely be lots of emotions this season. As both a dance mom and a dance medicine PT, I've had a unique window into both the dancers and the parents' perspective when it comes to all things dance. I've come to realize that dance parents generally aren't prepared to be thrown into the dance competition world. If you think about it, in my case at least, I started my daughter in a mommy and me class at 18 months, my other at 2 in a pre-ballet class as something to do to get them out of the house. I don't know that many parents anticipate the snowball effect that dance eventually has when it consumes your entire life and your child's. To be honest, starting a podcast was never even remotely on my radar. As I've evolved in the dance medicine space, I've realized that the studios gatekeep quite a bit of information, and sometimes rightfully so. Parents don't need to know every detail of the inner workings of the business side of the dance studio. However, parents who don't come from a dance background, like me, also have nowhere else to get the information. They trust that the studio is doing right by them, is training their child safely, and that they can trust what they are told is quote-unquote normal or typical. My experience locally has been that many competitive dance studios are not very welcoming to someone like me, which is unfortunate. My desire is to educate dancers and dance parents on health and wellness topics and explore healthy ways to navigate the competitive dance world. At the end of September, I attended the annual IADAMS conference in Las Vegas. I love any opportunity to get into a room with other dance medicine professionals, and IADAMS is the best place to do that. IADAMS stands for the International Association for Dance Medicine and Science, and it's a conference that occurs annually, and dance medicine professionals from all around the world come to attend. Each time that I've attended, I've met so many new people and made friends really around the world. And it's just the coolest space because everybody is so welcoming and supportive of one another. And it's just really nice to be in the room with other dance medicine professionals that are passionate about the same thing. We have great conversations about dancer health. And what I realized over the course of those few days is that we have these conversations in the dance medicine space all the time, but we already know these things. I feel strongly that parents and dancers would be empowered by this information, and I really wanted to start having these conversations in a broader space. The week after Adams, Taylor Swift released The Life of a Showgirl, and the title track, honestly, I think is what pushed me over the edge. If you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend you do. The storytelling piece of the song talks about an aspiring artist who looks up to her idol and receives some words of caution, some messaging that her life is not as glamorous as it appears. The young artist takes her wisdom and pursues her dreams anyway. This reminds me of us as dance parents and our children, except we don't know where to look for that wisdom or advice. My daughter dreams of being a Rockette one day. My dream for her is that she can achieve that if that's what she desires, but safely, with a body that will continue to support her dancing or whatever else she chooses for the rest of her life, not to be left with a broken body or surgeries in her teens and 20s that will cut her career short. Competitive dance has evolved, and depending on your child's future goals or aspirations, it may serve them well or not at all. This is not a podcast meant to tear down any one path, but to illustrate the variety of options and paths available, to highlight some precautionary tales, and to educate on how our dancers can stay healthy on their journey. Some of my goals for this podcast include providing education on dance medicine topics, addressing health and wellness questions and curiosities that competitive dance parents have, uncovering what skills your dancer actually needs to have a professional career if that's what they desire, to share stories from professionals to highlight different paths dancers have taken to achieve their performance and career goals, to explore options for dancers outside of competitive dance, and discuss what happens after high school. I would also love to discuss studio culture, red flags, pros and cons, highlight products, resources, and organizations that benefit dancers, and talk about differences in how studios run and just the intricacies of the competitive dance world. I plan to do that through providing health and wellness information, anecdotal evidence, and stories from people who have been there. If any of this sounds interesting to you, please subscribe, like the podcast, follow the podcast on Instagram at doctordancemompodcast, and that's Dr. DR abbreviated, Dance Mom Podcast. On YouTube at Dr. Dance Mom Podcast, and that's also Dr. abbreviated, so DR period, Dance Mom Podcast. Or email us at doctordancemompodcast@gmail.com, and that's doctor written out, so DOCTOR, dancemodpodcast@gmail.com with your listener questions, feedback, or topic suggestions. I definitely want to hear from you guys. I want this to be whatever people need it to be. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned something. Please be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Also, make sure you head over to Instagram and YouTube and follow us there. Send us your listener questions, topic suggestions, and feedback at doctordancemompodcast@gmail.com. That's Doctor, fully written out, Dance Mom Podcast, also fully written out, @gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening.